three hosts. You have myself, Timothy, you have Lachlan,
Howdy.
and you have Ruben.
G'day.
So far, so good. Looks like we've fixed our technical issues which plagued us the other week. And we were just talking before we started about that we're only up to section 13 of the book. That's what happens when the majority of us in our families get COVID and all this other nonsense happens. So we've had extensive delays between episodes, and then last episode we had technical issues. Then last week we had holidays. We're back. We're going to get back on track, and hopefully we can do more than two tonight, but we'll see what happens. One thing we learnt during the Republic is that it takes longer than we expect.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, yeah, anyway.
I still don't even feel like we're into the new year.
Yeah. What is April?
Yeah.
Where did summer go?
Christmas before you know it, Rubes.
Yeah, maybe it's because we kind of skipped summer this time around.
Yeah, so for our overseas viewers and all listeners, we've had very unusual weather for what we're used to here in Australia. Usually our summers are 40 degrees Celsius, long hot summer sweaty sunburn days, and instead we've had a crap ton of rain and wintry sort of feeling weather 4 months early, so it's been a bit strange, but over the last week we got a bit lucky and got some sunny weather finally. But yeah,
I don't think we've had one 40-degree day this year.
No, I don't think so either.
Very unusual.
Yeah, I think it felt like almost every day of January and February the previous summer was 40 degrees. So to just have such a cool summer is really strange.
Well, cool and wet, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we are a desert continent, but you wouldn't know it.
Not at the moment, yeah.
Anyway, down to more serious business. Beverages. I am actually drinking two types of beverages tonight. I'm finishing off the peated whiskey that I bought a week ago with Ruben.
Nice.
And over the week we made short work of that. There was maybe a third of a shot left, so I'll pop that in here, and then I'll be switching to Japanese whiskey.
They're good.
What are you drinking there, Lachlan?
I have a 2014 French Red, which is rather nice. We actually had a Orthodox Easter at our place today, so which is a week later than regular sort of Easter, and so did a lamb roast. So had to break out a bit of red vino. So it's rather good.
Just had to be done.
Absolutely.
How about you, Rubes? What are you drinking?
I've got a Stone Circle Premium Merlot from Casa Grain Wineries, which is one of the wines that I picked up while on holidays with Tim and his family.
I was going to say, I'm familiar with Casa Grain. Yeah, they're up in Port Macquarie, right?
Yeah, that's a damn nice drop too. That Merlot. Mm-hmm. We smashed a bottle of that the other night. So I've come back from a week away with Rubes and his family and my family, and immediately started eating better and drinking water instead of bad stuff, because I'm like hopped on the scales and I was like, holy crap. I think I forgot about that one of those Stoic virtues of moderation.
Was your t-shirt selection tonight like a reflection of where you're thinking, because you're wearing the Thor era of Thor dad bod?
Correct. And on Friday, I had my fat Thor t-shirt on, which says "Still nice. Worthy" on the back.
Yep.
So yes, definitely feeling the kilos. But that's okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, let's get stuck in. So I will read this passage and we will discuss. So 13. If you wish to make progress, you must be content in external matters to seem a fool and a simpleton. Do not wish men to think you know anything, and if any should think you to be somebody, distrust yourself. For know that it is not easy to keep your will in accord with nature, and at the same time keep outward things. If you attend to one, you must needs neglect the other. So I read this first part and I'm like, tick. I'm sure I seem like a fool and a simpleton to many people. But no,
Look, it's
seriously.
I think it's a pretty fair observation of stuff that happens in the workplace all the time. Hey, how often do you come
Oh yeah.
across somebody who's not willing to kind of put themselves out there, of not understanding what they need to do because they don't want to look silly? And you know, as somebody has people reporting to them, I'd much rather somebody comes to me and tells them that they don't know what they're doing, so we can fix it up, get everybody on track, on the same page. And I think I've got much more respect for somebody who can, you know, pull the big boy pants on and fess up when they don't know something. And it's not even fessing up. Like it's just sometimes you just don't know because you don't know, right? And there can be like an element of assumed knowledge. I think you've got to be prepared to be more concerned about getting something right than how you look. So I can understand that, you know, forgoing the facade and, being allowed to look ignorant for a minute so you understand it better.
I think that's right. Um, if you're in the environment where that's accepted behaviour,
Mm.
and there are some environments that I've experienced where that's not the case, and people say things like "lie and back yourself," rather than
Wow.
rather than admit you don't know.
Wow.
So,
Sign of unhealthy culture there.
well, yeah, but I agree. I agree with this sentiment very much. So, and it's something that I've tried to get my son particularly to understand, that idea through his music lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So when he gets frustrated at something at school that he's finding difficult, or he makes a mistake in his behaviour and he's being a little bit too harsh on himself, which he does sometimes, I just say to him, like, well, how do you learn to play piano? You can't read the music and hit the right keys exactly right first try. You're going to hit the wrong keys. You're going to make mistakes. But the only way you get better at playing piano is if you keep trying to play piano.
Mm.
If you go, this isn't working, and walk away, then you still suck at playing piano 10 years later. So you just got to keep going at it and making mistakes, and that's how you learn.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about the part where they're talking about it's not easy to keep your will in accord with nature and at the same time keep the outward things?
I think it's talking about pride, isn't it? Like saying if someone think you to be somebody, then distrust yourself.
Mm, mm,
So have that humility that I can look stupid to other people while I'm learning this. But then
yeah.
at some point you'll get good at it. And I think then people will start going, oh, that guy's really good at X or at Y. And that's where you've got to, like, not entertain that. I think that's what he's saying. Is that what you think?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
What are your thoughts, Rubes?
Yeah, I didn't really. I understood the first bit. I think that makes sense. If you want to learn something, you got to be willing to let yourself fail at it first. Like, best way to learn is to make mistakes. Um, and if you don't admit those mistakes, you never get any better at anything. So I think that's fair. But I didn't. Yeah, I didn't really understand that second bit where it starts talking about it's easier to keep your will in accord with nature. I'm not sure whether he's talking about your own nature, your personal nature, or nature more broadly, or what. I'm
Mm.
assuming it means personal nature because he says it's at the same time it's hard to keep your will in check with your nature at the same time as keep outward things. But yeah, no, I was a bit lost on that bit to be honest.
Mm.
Yeah,
I guess when you look at the last line, if you attend to one, you must needs neglect the other. I guess that's basically saying if you're too busy trying to keep up appearances, then you're not going to you're not going to achieve the other thing.
Mm.
yep.
Yeah, I remember my old boss. If he was out there sort of explaining something to a bunch of us, And at the end, like he sort of says, anyone got any questions? You just get that silence because, no one ever wants to kind of put their hand up to say that they don't understand what he's talking about. And he would say, silence is agreement. So if I'm hearing nothing, that means you all get it and you're not coming back to me, right? So last chance.
Yeah.
There are any details you want here, right? It's interesting because like sometimes people would you could sort of see it on their face, like thinking about asking something, and like, God, just do it, like it's really funny. But probably is something that is sort of built into that, and it's probably a survival mechanism, right? That sort of like fake it till you make it thing, because it seems to be common nature amongst a lot of people, right? Not to sort of fess up if you don't know something. Yeah.
But I even saw it when I was going for my boat license a few weeks ago. We got to the practical test out in the water, and the guy stops the boat and he's like, all right, who's going to go first? And just crickets. No one wanted to be that person who went first.
Yeah.
And I thought of this and I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I was like, yeah, I'll go first. Let me have a crack. And made one or two mistakes, but didn't care. Just whatever.
Yep.
I'm new. I'm paying to learn. That's why I'm here. And then my wife went second. And after that, like, how can you, as one of the other guys on the boat, sort of not put your hand up? So once the only girl in the group's had a go. So, but the guy's like, "Oh, why did you want to be first?" And I'm like, "Because I can't be worse than the guy in front of me." No one will look at me and go, "Phew, that guy's worse than the previous guy." I'll either be better than everyone who came after me, or I'll just be forgotten.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all good.
Excellent.
All right, well let's move to 14. All right. It is silly to want your children and your wife and your friends to live forever, for that means that you want what is not in your control to be in your control, and what is not your own to be yours. In the same way, if you want your servant to make no mistakes, you are a fool, for you want vice not to be vice, but something different. But if you want not to be disappointed in your will to get, you can attain to that. Exercise yourself then in what lies in your power. Each man's master is the man who has authority over what he wishes or does not wish, to secure the one or to take away the other. Let him then who wishes to be free not wish for anything, or avoid anything that depends on others, or else he is bound to be a slave.
Silence. No one wants to go first this time.
That's interesting. I was just gonna. I just observed.
I don't want to look silly.
I just observed that my Kindle said 117 other people highlighted the second half of that book.
Yeah, same.
It's like, ooh. It's like, actually, here's an experiment. If I highlight this, Ruben, will that number change to 118 for you?
Do it.
Or is it actually nonsense? Here we go. I've just highlighted it.
Well, we're not refreshing real time.
True. It should say 118 now.
No, it still says 117.
Fake news. It's fake news.
There's not got you again.
Boo. All right, so it is. I like how it starts off. It is silly. It is silly to want your children and your wife and your friends to live forever. That means that what you want is not in your control to be in your control. So, thoughts?
Yeah, look, again, we're just sort of working back again on what's within your sphere of control, and control what you can control, and don't try and control what you can't. That's why it's silly. I think he's kind of covered some of this in some of those earlier books and chapters before. So I think we'd be kind of familiar with some of this territory now. You reckon, Rubes?
Yeah, I reckon a really simple way to say what he's saying here is just if you have no expectations, then you won't be disappointed. Expect
Well,
nothing and never be disappointed.
I think there's that, but then he's also sort of saying that if you want, freedom from your desires, then don't desire things.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
because
Or
I know,
desire things that are within your ownership and your control.
yeah. If it's within your power, then you can do it. You can attain it. But if something's outside of your control and outside of your power, then why waste your energy trying to do that? That is silly, and you're going to make yourself a slave to trying to attain something that's unattainable.
Yeah, for me, the real, because you're right, it's sort of starting to go over the same things and rehash. But to me, the interesting way that he talks about this is the fact that he refers to freedom and slavery
Mm.
being um, attained through your desires. And I think I might have said this on one of the other podcasts, where it's almost like the opposite. We think in the opposite way in this day and age, where we think of freedom as being free to give in to your desires. He's saying the
Mm.
opposite. He's going, if you want to be free, you need to be free of those desires, or to have reasonable desires, or to deny those desires.
Yep. Yeah. I think the other interesting thing or choice of word that he used in there was he says to exercise yourself, then in what lies in your power. I thought the choice of exercise was an interesting word, and I wonder if it's a translation thing or if it was a really direct choice in that this is something that maybe you need to practice because it's not maybe naturally instinctive. And it's like
Oh yeah,
exercise yourself. You need to practice this because it's a
Yeah.
habit you need to form. And, it's really easy to give in to desire. And I know he's not necessarily talking about base desires, but I mean, he sort of is at the same time. It could be desiring anything. And, that you need discipline and it's something you need to work at.
My brain immediately changed that word to train from
Mm.
exercise. So,
oh yeah.
Yep.
um, now I want to take a slight tangent here. So, I don't ever think that my children and wife will live forever. But are you guys? What's the name of the Rohinian king in Lord of the Rings, Ruben?
Oh yeah, I don't know, man.
Do you remember, Lachlan?
No. I heard it
What's his
just the other
name?
day, but
It's
I
Eowyn's uncle. Um,
mm,
it'll come to me later. Anyway, he has this mad line where he wakes up from being under the spell, and he
yep.
realizes that, is it Faramir? No. Anyway, he realizes his son has been murdered, and he's burying his son, and he turns to Gandalf, and he says, "No parent should ever have to bury their child," and then weeps.
Mm,
And I'm like, that's kind of how I feel it is meant to be. So I think
mm,
when I read something like this, and I think, okay, it feels not unnatural that
Theoden, if it helps.
Theoden, thank you. It would have driven me nuts. Thanks for looking that up. So anyway, the point I'm making is it feels natural for, like, if your wife dies, okay, one of you has to die first, right? That kind of
yep.
makes sense. But when your kid dies, that feels like a tragedy because you've outlived your own child. That
Yep.
feels broken. So I guess that's why he's led with that example, because that's like the
I, I,
hardest one to
I
think
find it
about.
I find it interesting though too because if you consider the time that they lived in, it was actually probably more common than these days for children to sort of maybe not last, right? Because there's just a lot more sort of
Yeah,
disease and susceptibility and all that sort of stuff, right? And just other dangers that exist that maybe don't exist in the modern world. So it may have been a more common occurrence, and maybe that's why he does use it as an example because it did used to happen a bit in the more
oh,
sort of
no doubt.
ancient times versus our sort of time. So I think from a
Well,
modern lens, it's
you're
really
right.
hard to conceive.
Google reckons that the infant death rate in ancient Greece was about 40%.
Dang.
Whoa. Yeah, but that still sucks.
Totally. Yeah, no, here, there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, this
How
is
to
one of those
resolve the
points where I
feeling.
think, this is where I sometimes think, you
Mm.
guys talk about moderation. Are you using moderation for your philosophy right now? Because saying that I need to not care about or not desire that my kids outlive me,
Mm.
is that in accordance with nature? I
Mm.
would have thought being in accordance with nature is that you would, like, your kids would outlive you.
Well, they just sort of say that they don't live forever rather than outlive you. So, I mean, it could be that
You know,
you've
Yeah.
lived to be an old man and you've essentially retired or something, and your son might be in his 20s and going off to war in ancient Greece, right? And your chances of survival are going to be lower, and it may not be like a child, but they're still your child. You know what I mean? So it's probably a very real. Sort of situation that would sort of come up. And I think you could maybe make more peace of that if you're losing your 3-year-old or something like that, where you sort of say they got, such a lot of life ahead of them. It's hard for that not to feel tragic for anybody, you'd think. But I suppose, going back just to the way they try and frame this stuff, it's just about you can feel all of this, and it's not that you shouldn't feel it. Um, but it's kind of just fortifying your resolve that there's nothing you can do about it anyway, and just not dropping into a well of, I don't know, depression or something about it. And it's like, I don't think they're saying that it doesn't suck, but it's
Yeah.
just
and
maybe,
it's something out of your control.
Yeah.
yeah, and saying, yeah, I'm upset about it, but you know, what can you do? I'm still upset about it. You're probably not going to be able to like wash yourself of it. And I don't think he can sound a bit sort of cavalier. I know that what you're saying, Tim, about the way he kind of frames this stuff sometimes, because I feel the same way. Like
Cavalier.
kind of being a cold bastard.
Yep.
But I
But
don't think he's saying
maybe he had
don't
13
feel it.
kids, so he's like, one less mouth to feed.
That's it.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I do really like the second half, which has been highlighted by 118 people,
Yeah.
which is about basically if you're in charge of um, what you want or don't want, then
Mm.
you're your own master. But if you allow other people to have that power, then you're basically a slave.
Yep. And I think the bit, yeah, I always like the bit too. Where they're talking about there let him then who wishes to be free not wish for anything. Because off camera earlier we were sort of just talking about mortgages and cars and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't have desire to get yourself a new Porsche and all that sort of thing, you're not harnessing yourself to burdens and all that sort of thing. So there is freedom in less wants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it put a different way. I don't know if it was one of you guys telling me about it or not, but maybe it wasn't. Might have been a friend at work. But basically, it's also about choosing the right sort of. How can I say this? So the example they give is like TV. So if you're watching it on an 85-inch screen or a 55-inch screen or a 32-inch screen, you're still watching the same movie as the guy watching it on the 85-inch screen. So, like, there's a point of, are you here for the screen size or are you here to watch the movie?
Sure.
And so, I recently got a boat. I got a very old boat. Started ordering a whole lot of parts for it. Caught COVID, and my dad did a lot of the work. But the boat looks magnificent now, but it's still an old boat, and it's not like a massive chain of debt hanging around my neck because it was an old POS 1980s tinny, which we've invested time into and some love, and now it's an adequate thing to go in the water with. And Rubes came out on it with me last week up at Port Macquarie. It was great going up and down the river, and it's the same view that the guys in the friggin' $250,000 yacht boats are looking at.
Yep.
So, and the great thing is, you can if it gets a mark on it, it's like, oh, you damaged my paint job that we did with a spray can. Sad.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh damn, that's going to cost $4,000 to repair. So
no,
sure. There's a bit of that too, I think.
And I think coming back to Epictetus, he lived that similar life to Socrates, where it's kind of a simple man, simple tastes, keeping things within reason. I mean, it sounds like he achieved some reasonable sort of fame towards the end of his life, but he still led a pretty modest life, and that's obviously a choice sort of borne out in some of his philosophy. So, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's something I find myself thinking more and more about since I started reading philosophy. Is just what size TV do I need? Like, do I need? Can I get the same enjoyment out of something that has less burden on me and on my finances or on my family?
Well, it's exactly what we were talking about before the show about that guy who paid US $200,000 for a Honda S2000. We're saying like a $20,000 MX-5 with a couple of grand of modifications will get you just as much enjoyment.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the Rexy I've got. There's this company in the States that does tests on circles and figure eights, and at what point of G-force do you lose traction. And the Rexy on the circular test loses traction 0.01 of a G before a 911 GT3 does. And it's a tenth of the price.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, so a strut bar later. We're there. Like, do we really need that Porsche badge? Well, that's nice, but that comes with a lot of debt and a lot of time to pay that off, and service costs that are expensive and scary. And I think there's a sensible middle ground, I think, that you can find where you can still have some fun, but where you're not dying out of anxiety every time you use a thing in case it breaks.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I heard, I don't know if it was an old interview or not. It looked relatively recent. Talking to Jim Carrey, and he was saying something like he was retiring. I was like, oh, why are you retiring?
Yeah, I heard something like that.
Yeah, and he sort of said, oh, I've got something that most celebrities probably aren't going to admit to, but I've got enough. I'm satisfied.
Wow.
So, and I thought, that's pretty cool, have enough self-awareness. He's going, I'm doing painting now. I'm kind of really enjoying that. I don't need to keep accumulating more and more and more. I'm good.
Yeah. You can't tell me he shouldn't, if he was at least moderately smart with his money, wouldn't have financial independence by now, you know what I mean?
You'd think so, right?
I did hear he said he would do Ace Ventura 3, but it would have to be directed by... Who did he say it had to be directed by? It was someone ridiculous.
I don't know.
Like some amazing director.
That's funny.
I'm going to look it up right now because it's funny.
Yeah. He's a pretty interesting cat. I think he was on that Comedians in Cars Having Coffee. I think vaguely I remember sort of seeing him on that, and he was doing a lot of painting at that point in time. And I was like, it's interesting what sort of stuff people get into when they do achieve financial independence, right?
Yeah. Well,
pursue the passion projects.
Yeah, but you would assume he's like a creative kind of dude. Like he's got that.
I found it.
That mentality.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
what did he say?
He said he would do Ace Ventura 3 if it was directed by Christopher Nolan.
Ace Ventura just got dark.
Oh yeah. I would
Dark
actually
and
watch
gritty.
that.
That would
Yeah.
be hilarious. There you go.
I'm Miss
I'd watch
Ventura.
You actually find it. He's actually the homage to the original Joker. Is what it becomes an Ace Ventura Batman crossover.
that.
That would be amusing. He's already done the Riddler though, so I don't think he can do two.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be a spin out if he did? Imagine if he did do a Joker eventually. That'd be such a spin out.
Do you know what? He'd probably be an amazing Joker, just quietly.
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
it'd be crazy.
Because comedians can often play the darkest roles like better than anybody.
Yeah, they're messed up in the head. I want to see Dave Chappelle
totally.
play a villain in a movie. I reckon he'd be mad at it.
Yeah.
He would. He's buff now. Like, he's big and fit and strong. He's
Yeah.
sharp of wit. I reckon he'd go great.
Let's see that.
All right. Well, let's keep going.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty then.
Very nice. Okay, 15. Let's read this. Remember that you must behave in life as you would at a banquet. A dish is handed round and comes to you. Put out your hand and take it politely. It passes you. Do not stop it. It has not reached you. Do not be impatient to get it, but wait till your turn comes. Bear yourself thus towards children, wife, office, wealth, and one day you'll be worthy to banquet with the gods. But if when they are set before you, you do not take them but despise them, then you shall not only share the gods' banquet, but shall share their rule. For by so doing, Diogenes and Heraclitus, I didn't say that right, and men like them were called divine and deserved the name. So that's interesting.
I'm glad you were reading that passage.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to get it wrong. Now, I'm just going to share a story here, which will hopefully embarrass my wife slightly. So we were at a dinner a few years ago. It was a big cocktail dinner. I think it was at a wedding or something like that. And the food trays were coming out. And we were also hungry that we strategically placed ourselves outside the kitchen door. So then as every tray of food came out, we could get some. And when I read this, I instantly remembered that, thinking, oh my goodness, we were hopeless at this. We would not let it pass by. We were like, hey, what's this? Bring it over here. So anyway.
I think you're in dire need of some sustenance, though, so you can be forgiven there for.
I'm fading away. There's nothing to me. This is cool.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good story. I think it's talking to you about patience as much as anything. Be patient for life's rewards, and if they come by, you can take them. If you can't wait for them, you're starting to again sort of want to get something that's not yours or out of your control. It's only going to lead to frustration and jealousy. So it's kind of getting back into those sort of base desires and trying to control those instincts, I think. I like the fact, though, that you clarify that it's okay to take them if they do come around to you, though.
Yeah. But then he goes on to say that if when they come around, you don't take them, but you despise them. He speaks of that very highly. He basically says that's like the next level of, being awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like,
but he even says that you end up sharing with their rule. So I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
To me, it's like there's a 3-tier system here. It's like be greedy and chase everything, or be neutral, and if it comes by, take some. If it doesn't, don't complain.
Sure.
And then there's like next level, which is actually don't even despise those things. Don't even want them. So when they're put in front of you, you can go, that's ridiculous. It's like a 3-tier system where the middle's fine to be at, but if you want to excel, go to the next level.
Well, I'm wondering if he's going full Plato here or full Socrates here and saying, the most important things are the forms, that higher level of knowledge. So if you shun the material, then you have a better chance of achieving what's really important. I'm wondering if that's what he's pointing towards.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Rubes. I think you're bang on there. It's about that sort of ascending to the higher plane when you become the true philosopher, and like we were just saying in the previous one, he'd lived a modest life out of choice, following this philosophical sort of journey, and I think he's sort of, I wouldn't say he's blowing his own trumpet, but at least he's sort of, living his own, doctrine, so to speak.
Yeah. I want to do the Death of Socrates so bad. I'm going to be pushing you guys to read that after this book.
Yeah, I think that'll be our next one to read. Just coincidentally, I came across a poem last week or the week before on a YouTube video.
Don't you? Does that ever happen to you? Anything you guys? You just coincidentally come across a poem? That's something that happens to you often too.
I listen to a lot of motivational stuff, but it's a poem called "If" by Rudyard Kipling. Are either of you familiar with that?
I know Rudyard Kipling.
I just thought it was funny the way you said that. It's like I just pictured you walking down the shop, and then all of a sudden a poem coincidentally walks past.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a great poem. I'm not sure I agree with 100% of it, but it sort of echoes this quite a lot. I'll read one little part of it. It says, "If you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same." If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch things you gave your life to broken and stoop down and build up with worn out tools, eventually says the world is yours.
Yeah, right.
So, but it's a lot much longer poem than that. But I came across a reading of it by what's that English guy that's the butler in the 3 good Batman movies?
Michael Caine.
Yes, he did a reading of it on the YouTubes, and I was like, "Oh, this is a good poem. I like that."
Yeah, right.
And then I read the comments, and it's called "If."
Okay.
And the comments on that video, the first comment was this dude, and he was like, "My dad gave this poem to me when I was like 14 years old, and then went to Vietnam and died. And I took this poem out of my drawer and put it on the wall, and it's been there ever since, and it's been like my guiding light." And I'm like, wow. Heavy.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a good poem. Check it out. So, I'll probably link it in the chat on Facebooks as well.
Yeah, Rudyard Kipling wrote The Jungle Book.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So he's quite a well-known writer. Oh, I can see that straight away. "If" by Rudyard Kipling, read by Sir Michael Caine. There you go.
Sir Michael Caine.
Have a listen to that and see what you think.
I will.
Anyway, so what do you think about passing by the wife, children, office, wealth? It's more the same, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess any sort of desires you can kind of put in the same box, right?
Yeah. I think we'll get this sort of familiarity the more we go into this book. I think we'll start seeing these common ideas and themes coming out.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I suppose that like you could have flipped this message a little bit too, and it's a bit it feels very 2022. Gratitude, because that's something people talk about a lot these days, which is not something that
it's 2019.
Yeah, okay, there you go. But it is sort of, I think, being thinking about being happy with what you've got, right? Don't be greedy. Live with moderation. That might be just don't be a greedy asshole. Wait your turn. Be patient. If you don't get what you want, don't chuck a tantrum. Just be an adult. Don't be a little pain in the ass. Live with virtue, and if you live by that virtue, you probably won't care about this stuff anyway. So,
there's a great guy at work who I work with. I won't say his name, but we all call him Malacca. And one of the other guys at work had all these different inspirational quotes on the wall, laminated. So he wrote one in Texter and got it laminated, put on the wall for him. It said, "Don't be a Malacca all your life." Yeah, that's very funny.
Nice one.
All right, let's keep going. 16.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's no big Greek names in this one, so I'll see how I go. When you see a man shedding tears in sorrow for a child, abroad or dead, or for loss of property, beware that you are not carried away by the impression that it is outward ills that make him miserable. Keep this thought by you. What distresses him is not the event, for that does not distress another, but his judgment on the event. Therefore, do not hesitate to sympathize with him so far as words go, and if it so chance, even to groan with him. But take heed that you do not also groan in your inner being. That's interesting.
He's being a cold bastard again, isn't he? Hey?
Well, yeah, it's like, if that guy's child dies, well, that doesn't really upset you, so it really shouldn't upset him. What?
Yeah.
Like, I get what he's saying. It's technically correct.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that's what you should aspire to, surely. Like, oh, my child died. If it was someone else's kid, I wouldn't care, so...
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
Well, he's saying to have empathy for the guy, but just don't, I think, get sucked into the grief,
Don't
I
let it
suppose.
get you down.
Yeah. Just, whistle as you walk off. Have a good day, chum.
Bro, that
maybe
must
not.
suck. Glad that's not me. Bye.
Yep, that's it. But, yeah, no, it's all right. I think it's just have sympathy for your fellow man, but, don't take it to heart. Know that there's nothing can be changed about what's natural and out of your control. So that's
I've heard
thing
it
that
put
was in
like...
that earlier one about, what was it, like being thankful for what you have, but being prepared to give it back when the time comes. What's that thing? It was like,
Yeah.
it's like everything was sort of borrowed or...
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's still a bit different, though. Like, this one is, when you read that, you're like, oh, dude, really?
He doesn't say not to sympathise, though. He says, don't hesitate. Like, therefore, do not hesitate to sympathise. Please, sympathise.
Yeah.
But take heed that it does not also groan in your inner being.
I do kind of get that. And my mum used to say that sometimes, she would go to a funeral for someone that maybe she wasn't too close with, but it might have been like a friend of hers mother or something, right? And so she wasn't particularly close with the mother and so didn't have an emotional connection with them. But sometimes she said she would go to a funeral and it would just bring up other feelings within her and she'd really weep and get sort of a bit overwrought with emotion because it would just bring other stuff up. And so I think maybe this is kind of what Epictetus is kind of talking about, is maybe just not getting carried away with it. I will add, my mum found that therapeutic, right? So she felt she was getting it off her chest and she felt better about it. But I guess maybe it's not quite in her inner being, if you know what I mean. Like she's doing it and let's say she's groaning with the person who's grieving. And then at the end of the funeral, she's like, well, that's it. And she could pack it up and keep moving on. So maybe that is exactly what he's talking about. I'm not sure.
Well, actually, now that you mention it, and I'm looking at the wording too, it says, do not hesitate to sympathise. A little while back, I was listening to a discussion on the difference between empathy and sympathy. And the people that were discussing it were essentially saying that they think that empathy is a problem because empathy is basically sharing in someone's grief, whereas sympathy is understanding and sort of expressing that you understand.
Mm.
So the difficulty being is if you're too empathetic, it will drag you down into the same, in that same dark place. And then the problem being, like if somebody's drowning, if you just jump into the water, you're just going to end up drowning with them rather than if you were more, analogy-wise, if you were more sympathetic, you would, keep one leg on land and throw them out and pull them back in somehow. But to be able to help someone, you've got to have that foot still on solid ground. So I'm wondering if that's he's almost like pointing out the difference between sympathy and empathy to me. He's saying it's fine to be sympathetic to someone, to understand and express that you understand. But if you go so far to, as he says, groan in your inner being, it's almost like you're jumping into the same quicksand and just getting consumed by grief. And then you're not really, like, how can you help someone if you're in the same dark suffering as they are?
That's a really good explanation. And I'm glad you went into the difference between sympathy and empathy, because I was going to go there.
So, it's a really interesting one. I must admit, I hadn't really given that too much thought, but it's actually quite thought-provoking looking at those differences. So, good call.
Yeah, what made you go down that sympathy empathy type route to me?
Oh, just I think what's going on in Ukraine right now. When you see children's hospitals getting bombed, stupid things like that really sort of there's like really horrendous activity, and there's a grief that those people have, and I think some people, when they watch that, they own that grief probably too much, where it makes them suffer in a way that's probably unhelpful. Do you get what I mean? Like it's sad and
well,
it's
I also
offensive,
think everyone. I think also everyone would accept that when you are suffering emotionally, it inhibits your decision-making process. You're more likely to make a bad decision when you're emotional. So if you're projecting that kind of grief and you're harboring it within yourself, it's going to affect your decision-making process. It's going to affect how you can help others. And I suppose what you're describing is a very far-off event, so maybe it's not so applicable. I mean, not a great deal that you can do essentially to help that situation. But I mean, if you were in a position to help it, are you going to make a good decision if you're being empathetic rather than sympathetic?
Well, I think you can. I don't know. I feel like sympathy is something that you can go, oh, that's a bad situation, and what can I do to help that problem? Whereas empathy is more, I'm going to feel that problem.
Yeah. And I think our society generally promotes now empathy rather than sympathy. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know.
I don't know that. I think you're quite right, but I don't know that maybe. Yeah, it's intentional. I think it's a misunderstanding maybe of the meaning, because I must admit I hadn't really given it too much thought, but I think your explanations, it's quite thought provoking, to be honest.
And look, just as a caveat, maybe those explanations are entirely wrong. That's what I've come across in my discussions. But,
look at you being with Socrates. I don't really know anything.
By all means, get your dictionary.
Nothing.
All
right, let's do one more that feels very Shakespearean. Oh, sorry, go.
No, I was worried. Because I thought you guys were starting to think that I might know something, as per the quote from a couple of minutes ago.
Yes, we think you are very wise. Don't trust yourself. Yeah. All right, we'll do this one as our last one for tonight's episode. This feels a bit Shakespeare-y. Let's see if you guys know what I'm thinking of once I've read it. So here we go. 17. Remember that you are an actor in a play, and the playwright chooses the manner of it. If he wants it short, it is short. If long, it is long. If he wants you to act a poor man, you must act the part with all your powers. And so, if your part be a cripple, or a magistrate, or a plain man, for your business is to act the character that is given you, and act it well. The choice of the cast is another's. What sort of Shakespeare thing did that guys remind you of?
Oh, that life is but a stage, or something like that.
Yeah. The I think actually I know it's a bit of a controversial dude right now with some of the charges that have been put against him, but I'm pretty sure Marilyn Manson quotes that in one of his songs.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
really?
Hmm. Searching.
Yes.
Oh,
Apparently he has done
that
81, so that's not a good way. But it's basically that. Well, it's from Macbeth, I think.
Right. I have read that a long,
Is it from
long time.
Macbeth?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's Macbeth. Macbeth is the Quebec though. Going off memory, Macbeth is the something about something sound and wind and fury or something. Life is but something similar idea, but I don't. It could be.
I thought I recalled Fassbender saying that.
You might be right. You might be right.
Yeah, Macbeth. Life's but a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage.
Ah, yes. Interesting.
Yes. Anyway, that's what it reminded me of.
There you go.
Have you watched Michael Fassbender's Macbeth, Lachlan?
No. It's good.
It's visually epic, and the music is quite good too. It's slightly different in places to the traditional way of telling that story, but I really liked it, but I didn't understand it. I think I watched it with Ruben at the time. I think we both came away basically saying, really liked it, didn't understand it. Is that how you remember it, Ruben?
That's how I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, because it was all done in the old tongue too.
Yeah, I recently watched the Denzel one, and then I actually read through the play as well. So I think I understand now, but I didn't understand it then.
I heard the Denzel one's pretty good too.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it's so good.
I have to watch both back to back, see which one's better.
We could do that. We could do that for something on the podcast. We could read the play and watch the 2 movies.
Oh, nice.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I haven't seen the other one, but I definitely liked Macbeth by Fassbender. That was very nice. I think it was the same director actually that did the Assassin's Creed movie. Did that movie, and he also had that what's her name, Marion Cotillard as Fassbender's opposite. So they look good together on the screen together. They work well. She's in Inception.
Okay.
She's in that too. She's a good actress. Anyway, what do we think about the reading?
Remember that you are an actor in a play, and the playwright chooses the manner of it. I just want to know who the playwright is. I'm guessing he's talking about fate again.
That's what I thought.
It's King the Conqueror. Sorry, Marvel reference.
Yeah, I thought it was going back to where we're at the end of the Republic, when your soul was going to choose life like a ballot from the fates, and the script for that life was cast according to the ballot that you selected.
Yep.
And that basically you're working out the life, the concept of a life that's preordained by a higher power, and that you've still got you've got a loose destiny, but it's still in your hands that whatever role you're given, to give it your all and to give it your best, and that any life according to the fates had an opportunity to be a moral and well-lived life, but you also have opportunity perhaps to live a non-moral and to live a bad life, right? Or a life of excess and giving in to pleasures and what have you at the cost of your morality, perhaps.
That's an interesting... Oh, sorry. I thought you...
No, go. You go.
No, I was going to go on a tangent. I was just going to say that's an interesting explanation for the two parallels of predestination versus free will. Because that's something that's debated quite a lot in Christian circles.
Okay.
But yeah, like having that, I've got free will to decide the role to a point, and then but
Hmm.
once the role, then that's predestined, that's the path. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the way I understood it from the Republic anyway was that you still had options, and that whilst you might sort of get your die is sort of set, so to speak, as far as like the general outline, how you perform that task is up to you.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, that's
Hmm.
kind of, I see where you're going with that. 'Cause that's kind of what this is saying. It's saying your business is to act the carrier that the character that is given to you and act it well. So once you're given
yeah,
that character, you can choose to act it well or you can choose to act it poorly.
absolutely.
So there's an element of free will within what is destined to occur.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but to some extent, that's the way freedom always is because freedom requires boundaries to exist.
Freedom is free. Great movie, Team America.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, look, I think it's basically your life lesson at the end of it is like no matter whether you feel you got a dud lot or you've got the silver spoon in your mouth, is that you make the most out of your life no matter what your position is, right? That's a
Yeah,
basic sort of core lesson he's trying to
yeah. Once again,
get.
he's like, it's out of your control. You can only control what you own. So own
Hmm.
it, play
Yeah.
it well, act it well.
Well, and interesting. I mean, this is coming from a former slave and cripple. So,
Mm.
I mean, if anyone knew anything about getting a dud lot, um, he went from that position to a position of being held in quite high esteem and having a school of thought sort of following on from him. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if there's
Well,
ever
how do you think?
anyone who probably felt like he's sort of broken maybe his preordained role, I guess Epictetus probably felt he lived that.
Well, hold on. Maybe he achieved that because when the dinner plate came around, he despised it.
Maybe he rose to that higher level. That was it.
But how do you reckon this gels with kind of some of the ideas you hear floating around these days? Like, you can, if you will it, if you dream it, you can live it. You can be whatever you want to
Manifest,
be.
baby.
Yeah. Like it's a very different outlook to that sort of mindset, isn't it? Like you can
Hmm.
choose to be whatever you want to be, and nobody can tell you what you are, and that's sort of you.
It's such crap that like manifest,
What do you really think,
manifest.
mate?
Yeah, curse on that one. Beep.
Beep, beep.
Anyone who thinks they can sit back and dream about being rich or whatever without doing hard work
Yeah.
is delusional.
Well, there's
Enjoy the
some
fantasy.
people who are on crypto probably disagree with you, but it's pretty rare.
Yeah, I look. That's to a degree. Good luck, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think
Oh
anyone
yeah,
had foresight that it was going to go
it's
anywhere
like
like what
it's
it
like
did.
it's like living near a fireworks factory that blows up and it burns down 100 houses, but somehow the safe from that factory landed in your lounge room. That's what
Mm,
crypto's like. Yeah, so many people get burned, but you just happen to get the safe land in your room. There's no
totally.
skill there.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's call it at that for the book, and let's head up to our favourite location for having a chinwag, the pub for lots of us. And
Oh, we're doing a
I'm going to
segment.
start. I'm going to start with a place that you and I went to on Friday, which was awesome. It was a coffee shop that doesn't sell coffee, but they also sell books and
And
vinyls.
records.
And so we
Oh,
went
cool.
there and spent probably an hour there. What do you reckon? It was about an hour?
Yeah, I love those secondhand bookshops. They're like amongst my favorite places to go.
It was great. I think we spent exactly the same amount each, but got completely different things, which was pretty funny.
I'm going to
Um,
guess Rubes bought books and you bought records.
I got books and a record.
Tim bought books and records.
But you'll be a bit jelly of the record I got, Lachlan, because it was Dave Brubeck collection.
Oh, nice.
It was very nice. I've listened to it. It's in very good condition, no scratches, and had some tracks in there I'd never heard before. I was like, "Ooh, this is
that's
nice."
cool.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I was very, very, very chuffed with that. And I got a philosophy book for $10 that had Aurelius, Epictetus, and someone else in it. I can't remember the third one. And I also got a book on Julius Caesar from the 50s, which had some person's handwritten notes in there.
Ah, cool.
I'm like, that's a bit of a find. And I found, so I have several sets of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books, and I've got all the figurines and things from when I was a teenager. There's some big A4 size comics that I've got 3 of the 4 books, and I've been looking for the 4th one forever, and they didn't have it. But I also have these small ones that are like A5 shape, and I was missing one of those books, and they had that book, and I got it for $5. I was a happy man. Happy man.
What a
So that's
find.
one done.
What a find.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. What did you get, Ruben?
Oh, don't ask me to list it. I got an old Solzhenitsyn. Whenever I see a secondhand Solzhenitsyn book, I just buy it. I got, and I discovered an encyclopedia set that I'd love to collect. It's basically Western classics, but just pretty much doubles as like a history of thought. But we realised that to find a complete set of that will cost you about $3,000 now. So it's like an early 1900s encyclopedia set. So I bought one of those, and Timmy bought one of the other ones. I got the Plotinus section of it. And what else did I get? I got a couple other books, but I can't think of what they are off the top of my head. Oh, Joseph Conrad. I've got another copy of Heart of Darkness because I'd lost my copy. And then I saw another book in there by Joseph Conrad, which I had no idea about. So I thought I'd pick that up as well.
So probably
interesting. Encyclopedias. I mean, like my kids would never have seen an encyclopedia.
I kind of want to collect them, but they just take up so much space. But the reason I want to collect them is because you notice with the internet these days, information can be changed and manipulated so quickly.
Absolutely.
And I mean, just because it's old information doesn't mean it's correct, right? So it could still be wrong. But I feel like when I'm 70, they're going to be a really interesting touch point to sort of go, well, no, this is what people thought at a certain time, and it's written down, it's inked. You know what I mean? It hasn't been altered. It hasn't been hasn't been memory hold. But like I said, I realized from that day that apparently collecting encyclopedia sets is a very expensive hobby.
Well, they're not if you look in the right place. I have more than once found on Facebook Marketplace complete Encyclopedia Britannica sets, like 24 books for $100.
Yeah, I might have to start picking them up.
The thing was, do you remember like people would be like paying by the week or whatever for like 4 years or something to try and like buy their kids a set? Because that was a thing in the 80s, like in particular, like a sort of, I don't know if it was a status thing, but it was kind of like something people wanted to do for their kids was to have the encyclopedias.
We had an older set, and I remember using it for heaps of high school assignments.
I remember using this in the school library.
Yeah.
So funny. We really do sound like middle-aged men now, right?
Yeah, I wonder where that's gone. I wonder if my parents have that buried away somewhere. They're the sort of people that keep everything, so maybe.
You might want to check with it. But anyway, that shop is called Flynn's Bookshop on 104 Flynn Street, Port Macquarie. So if anyone's out that way, check him out. Really friendly guy, pretty knowledgeable when it came to the pop culture stuff, if there's anything you're interested in. But also has a lot of books, so check it out.
Heaps of comics too. Heaps of old school Marvel and DC and Black Horse and all sorts of stuff there. It was really cool. Yeah. Anyway, that was the reason I brought that up is the bookstore that I got my very cheap copy of The Republic from at Mount Druitt shut a couple of months ago. It's gone.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure the bookstore in Blacktown went too. And while we're there, we're talking about like, oh, we want to support this because we don't want these stores to go away. So, Lachlan, I wanted to ask, like, when's the last time you've been to a physical bookstore?
Long time. I have been into Dimmicks in the city, but it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
That's
It's
at least 2 years ago now.
It's been 2 years at least, yeah.
What do they have to offer? I think, like, when you think about, like, EB Games, for example, and Zing, when you go in there, there's an environment, you can see things in the flesh because they're collectibles and they can sort of
trade in.
Yeah, you can trade in things. Like, do you think it's a failed model now because of online that, like, you're buying the same book? Like, the last book I just bought, new, I got from Amazon.
Same here. Excuse me. I think a lot of time though, when I buy books now, I don't want a physical copy. Because storage is the problem, right?
And
100%.
It's a modern problem. We've all got too much stuff, right? And look, I'm happy to go digital when it comes to that stuff. Ironically, the last physical book I bought was The Republic, which I have already read, but then bought it because I wanted the keepsake, and I thought it was something that was now important enough to me that I wanted to keep a physical copy for. But I think that's unusual for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, our kids have a massive collection of books. They really love reading. My older two boys both read an absolute ton, and it's all physical. So I don't know. So we still do buy them stuff every now and then. And it's probably more likely that they're going to get them from Kmart or something, though. You know what I mean? Rather than going into a bookstore, though.
Yeah.
I think the thing that the bookstore adds is knowledge. And, when you go and talk to somebody who works in a bookstore, they're usually literature nerds, right? Which means if you want to ask advice about something, that's the value add that they've got, because they have knowledge and expertise that I don't know. You can't say it's like not necessarily bias. Everyone's got bias, but anyway, it's somebody who you can talk to and query. You may well do that stuff online now, right? You're doing an internet query to obtain information, but you can't look at that person and have that conversation to ask them about it, right? You can just read someone's Reddit review of what the thing's about, and if it's dumb or if it's good or if it's whatever. So I don't know. It's always good, I think, to be able to eyeball someone when they're telling you their opinion on something. I think you get a more real view. Not there, but an opinion is just an opinion, right? It's not fact. It's not truth. It's just like your opinion, man.
Well, the last physical book that I got, I think, is the right method. So I got a copy of the Word on Fire Bible, which just got released, I think, last year. And all it is, like, it's the same thickness as a normal Bible, but it's just got the 4 Gospels in it. And it's made by this Catholic company over in the States. And they've integrated commentaries from like 350 AD into there, plus commentaries from the last 200 years, plus artworks from the last 1600 years with explanations about that, plus history. And so as you read through each chapter, it's like 1 page of Bible for 40 pages of everything else. And it's in this beautiful leather casing with really thick paper with the gold trim around the edge. And it was expensive, but it's like an experience to read it because it's got this real sort of heaviness to it, and it looks beautiful with the gold trim, and the leather smells amazing, and it's soft and thick, and it's a real collector's piece. I think that's what will potentially save the physical bookstore is if they carry things that are more collectible. I think the Penguin Classic style of book of just a paperback that's $7, I think that's going to kill bookstores. I think they need to have things that are a premium and they're made to the highest standard and they look fantastic on the shelf and they feel amazing to hold, and you know what I mean? Like
there are
really
places,
good.
there are publishers that are sort of out there doing that kind of stuff. There's one I think of called Castelia House, and they do like a subscription model where they bring out a new book every month, but it's full blown leather bound, made to last 100 years type thing. But that kind of stuff's very expensive. Like I don't know what that subscription model. I think it's like $100 a month or something. Like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But they're focusing on classics like I think they did what's Marcus Aurelius one month,
Meditations.
and another month. Yeah, they did meditation one month, and another month they did something else. But so I think there are people out there that are sort of clicking onto that business model, and I think you might be right, because that's kind of after we finished reading The Republic, I sort of had a bit of a look online. I haven't found anything yet, but I would love to get like a good hardback or even leather bound version of The Republic. I think just for the same reasons that Lachlan spoke about.
Yeah, we were talking about that because I remember I sort of stumbled onto a copy of the Iliad that was done in that style, and it was beautifully bound and all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's something to be said. I mean, I do like reading a physical copy. I like holding it in my hands, and I do prefer to read it on paper than the screen. But I'd be just super choosy about
the ones you get there.
Selective books I'm going to get because I just know there's finite space, and I don't have a library at home, so
not yet. You will soon.
Yeah.
The more we do this, the more you'll be like, oh, that's another book. Yeah. Well, suddenly when we're 90, you would have read 6 books on this podcast.
Yeah.
At this rate.
That's great. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, mentioning long time, I think we'll wrap it up there so we don't go for heaps long. So yeah, for those of you listening / watching, thanks for your perseverance with us while we've had a few weeks of absenteeism due to health and unforeseen circumstances. But hopefully we're all back now, and also the tech issues seem to have pretty much sorted off, so that's excellent. And I just want to say thank you to Lachlan Rubin again for your participation.
Pleasure, good sir. Thanks for having us.
And remember, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither middle-aged men. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
All right, see you guys.